So I present myself. I'm Sébastien Valla from INRIA. And now we will speak about topics a bit less technical. We have seen a lot of techniques, floating points, bits, compilers, etc. Of course, in programming, we have to take everything of this in account in our program, but we have to do some software engineering to make it in the right way so it works at the end, which is a bit the challenging part in practice. So we'll speak now about unit test, which is one of the techniques we can use to solve the problem. To help to get a better chance to get a working program at the end. So for now, I will speak about why I started to make unit tests, so a bit the carrots about this philosophy. I will present it a bit like a motivation, a philosophical path, not too much as a purely technical one. Then we will think a bit about this methodology in a kind of real-world example coming from outside of computer science. And I will give some feedback about my own experience about this topic because I practice it by chance since my PhD all along my path. So I can give some feedback when we do it, not do it, how it's behaving in our life, kind of. So here I will give a bit the glasses for which I'm looking this domain. And if I have time at the end, I will give some timings to show that we can win in terms of probability to have our program working at the end, but also in time to develop it. So it's not only losing time to get something better, but also winning time in the end. So why I started? Why I started the unit test? So once upon a time, so I came back 13 years before, and I make my master thesis in 2009. And I was developing a kernel module for Linux. You don't have the slides at all? Nobody so told me. Thanks for pointing. Clone. It will be better. Nice. It will be better with the slides. So just to take unit test philosophical path, how it helps to face its own software. So the plan, I just make it. Sorry, you get it by all. So why I started? Why I started once upon a time? So I was a student finishing my master and making my thesis about Linux kernel module about memory management. So I developed for 5 months. Kernel modules is not quite easy to develop. So it was working after 5 months. So I tried to put it. So it was about memory management, about huge pages. This is my domain. I'm a memory management guy, kind of, in terms of operating system. So I tried to put my kernel module under my full KDE session. Starting, working. So, of course, the guy in the simulation center I was working on at CEA came to my office and said, now we can test on the real numerical simulation we have in the center, for which I was making this work in practice. This was not for KDE, but for the physical simulation there. Maybe I can put full screen. And the simulation was a very big code, 1.5 million lines of C++ code. Running at that time on 16 threads on my workstation, which was a big workstation for that time, 13 years ago. So I started the application. It started to run for half an hour. I was very happy because everything was working, dancing on my chair. It's starting to save data, so printing data, saving, etc. So I was saying, yeah, it went until the end. And then at exit, boom, kernel panic. Damn. And then after that, it was 2 months of debugging to find what was the problem. So of course, in a kernel panic, it's hard to make a GDB because once the kernel is done, GDB is not working very well, or at least not an easy way. So I had to make a kind of a log of all the calls which rise to my kernel module, which was roughly 7.5 million entries. and find what was the wrong sequence, which was leading to the bug inside this log. Good luck. 2 months of looking on that. At the end, I finished by found my mistake. I forgot to copy a member of a structure when the process was forking. So when at exit, this application was calling some other processes. So it was forking to make the new processes alive. And I forgot to copy one member when making the fork. So one of my struct had a wrong value, which was propagating over the processes. Fine. I mean, we don't care about the bug itself. The good point is that when I started my PhD to work over memory management, so making a parallel malloc for this application, I say myself, no, I will not start again this kind of bug. So I started to try to unit test everything and to take my my path over this domain. I was not convinced at the beginning, but at the end, you will see that now I'm a bit convinced about this philosophy. So let's move a bit about outside of the computer science world for a small moment. We will speak about philosophy and motivation. We will speak about the cost of making a mistake. So in real life, we can take an example, the Manhattan Project at Hanford. Probably you know that at that time, they made some nuclear reactors. And the historical context makes that people were going fast, very fast for their experiments because of the historical reason. And of course, as for software, they were discovering the problems which their new domain are posing. Like in software, when you start a new software, you are very happy, and a few years later, you are a bit more conscious about what are the problems your software is posing. And at that time, the way to solve the problem was to put some tanks in the sand and to put all the liquid waste inside those tanks. Everything, acids and nuclear things. And of course, a few years later, 2010, 55 years later, some starts to possibly leak. Cost of this problem now, it has to be handled until 2090 with $300 to $600 billion program in the US to solve this problem. Don't laugh, because in software we don't do better, of course, and it's even worse because we are fighting exponentials in software science. When you are making codes, this is a study of Capers-Jones. So this is an old study. He made a more recent one. I didn't have the chart here, but in 1996, he studies a lot of projects and tried to see how much it costs to solve a bug depending on the phase of the development of the software. Okay, so beginning of the software, you are here with $25, let's say, at that time. So 1996, it's a bit old now. But let's say it's $25 to solve the bug, of course, because you have your hand in your program, it's fresh in your head. You probably don't have too much things around your program, so it's the cost. And as long as you are going forward in the time of your software life, the price to solve a bug will increase. In statistics, probably depending on your project, it's not this kind of high number, but think about Google. When there is a bug at Google or in a bank, the cost is quickly a lot. So there is the cost of the penalties if you have a problem with the software, but also the number of engineers you need to put on the table, around the table to solve the problem. Because now, when your project is in production, if you have a problem, to solve your problem, you make a fix, but then before making it in production, you need to discuss with many people around your software to agree that this is a fix to make in production, when you make it, Friday, Tuesday, or another day of the week. And all those discussion costs. Think about CERN. When you deploy your software, it takes a month globally. So when you make a mistake, it's a lot of people which will be involved until the fix is in production. So let's say that if we remember not the number, but roughly that this purple curve is an exponential, the cost to solve a bug, you need ideally to find your bugs as soon as possible in the development phase. Okay, this is where I introducing the unit tests, because if you are making the unit test during the development, you will probably catch more bugs at the beginning than if you didn't do. So let's think about testing in another way than computer science now, still philosophy. We will think for a moment we are a car engineer. Okay, so let's take my car, which is here. And we want to build a car and we are the engineer responsible of the gearbox. Okay, we want to build a gearbox. How we proceed? First solution, we make no tests. We build a gearbox, we put it in a car, and we sell the car. Okay, fine. Probably the first car has been made like this. The new one, hopefully, probably not. At least we hope. Otherwise, probably we will not buy it. Because otherwise, the user need to pray before taking the car and go to the highway. To make a bit better, we can make some manual tests. Okay, so I take my car, I build a prototype, I put my gearbox inside, and I take the last student who come in June, who just arrived a month ago, and we give him the keys and say, now you take the car and you make a Grenoble-Marseille by taking the highway, and you tell us if the gearbox is running well. Fine, so the student say, okay. And we take the car and try. Hopefully, he try a bit, probably before taking it. You can say him, okay, we are a bit scientists, so we want some proof that it's working well along the road. So you can take a stethoscope and tell to the student that by driving, you can along the road try to hear if your gearbox is making some noise. So you drive, you try to hear. You drive, you try to hear. Fine. Okay, that's software development. Can we agree that sometimes we are doing this in computer science? And a bit more than sometimes, it's quite often in laboratories, in labs, in research, this is something we tend to do quite often, if we are honest. So this is a bit the way we are doing in computer science quite often. But if we want to be a bit more strict, we can make still manual testing, but not taking the highway in an uncontrolled environment, but making a controlled environment. So we have a test circuit, the parking in front of the lab, probably. And we have a list of tests to perform, and we have someone, probably again the students. We need to turn right, accelerate, turn left, park, go rear, etc., and test the gearbox. So we have a kind of test plan. Already, this is a bit better than taking the highway and making, I don't know which test. But clearly, there is some problem in software. It will be very hard to make a list of everything you need to validate everything in your software. Software, for every if and else you have in your software, ideally, you need a test. When you have 1 million lines of code, you have a lot of if else, a lot of for loops. Probably you will not validate everything that way. So that's already a progress, but not the final solution. If you want to make a bit better, you can say, okay, I have my test plan, so I try to automate. So in computer science, it translates in a shell script, which runs the program in some situations. So if I take my car, this is a bit putting the shell script around the car. So I put some camera, some automators, some motors to turn the wheel, to accelerate, etc. So it make this for my program. Notice that in Teams, I often see that the integration test is done with shell. This is a shell script. This is quite often. Python when it's a bit better, but most of the time it's finished with just some dirty shell script somewhere. The problem, it's fine because it's automated. So now it's a bit easier than taking a student every month to make the test. The problem is that once the car crashed, remind that we are the developer of the gearbox. The car has crashed. What is the problem? The script, the car, the wheel, I don't know. The gearbox, probably me. My problem is that the car is crashed with all the shell script broken in the CI environment, continuous integration environment. And probably the gearbox has exploded, so all the wheels has moved over the window. Good luck. So you call Go Gadgets and you try a bit that you understand quickly that what is the problem. And because making the shell script to run the program many times, it's quite easy. To debug it in production when the test has crashed, most of the time, if the program and the test has become complex, it starts to cost. I will give some numbers after that. So you can do better. Of course, if you are a car engineer and you need to make a gearbox, you will probably more focus on making a test bench, which is taking only the gearbox, put it in a controller environment. So it looks like this, which is putting the gearbox over a wall, putting an electric motor on it, and playing with the gearbox. Far easier than taking a car under the rain or the snow, depending on the outside conditions. The good point is that now you can also put some probes, some infrared camera to detect that there is some hotspot. The hotspot in your for loops in your program. You can put some vibration measurements with some microphones. You can put a lot of things to try to check if everything is going in the right way with your gearbox. So that's what we call unit test. In my philosophy, if I'm speaking in computer science, this is a unit test. I'm taking a small part of my car and testing it outside of the car in a controlled environment, so I can play with it easily. Also, as you put some probes, it's also a good way to sell to your clients that you make some progress, because you have some clear measurements on the progress you are making, which otherwise is sometimes a bit harder. So notice the contiguous transition. With unit test, ideally you will test one gear alone to say that the tooth have the right shape, for example. You will test 2 gears, then 4 gears, 5 gears, then the gearbox in full, and then the gearbox in the car, ideally. Which is the gearbox, it's what in computer science we tend to call the integration test. My gearbox in a full shape. And what some people tend to call the end-to-end test, everything in place, so the car fully running as a whole. Me, I prefer not to think this transition as a splitting between 2 domains. I'm mostly seeing this as a contiguous domain. I'm testing more and more components depending on where I am in the stack. The point is that for the end-to-end test, sometimes we use some different tools, but for the integration test and the unit test, most of the time we tend to use some similar tools to make them. So this is why I prefer to see this as a contiguous transition from the single line, let's say, example to a complex program. So the good point with the unit test also is that it's reporting to me that everything is working in a simple way. Here I have a particle program, so this is for some particle physicist, for example. So I run in Python PyTest to run the test of this program, and it's telling me that there is 2 tests here which has passed because it's in green, sorry, and saying that 2 tests has passed, so everything is going well, and I don't want to know more. If everything is going well, I don't want to be bothered with some printf speed is 2.5.6 or something like this, because otherwise you have to remember what should be the good values. The test is checking everything automatically. This is what I want. So a unit test, this is what in computer science, to come back from the philosophical world to in the computer. A unit test, this is a simple function which is just making some assertions. So we will use in most languages, the unit test frameworks are using the assert keyword to assert that my absolute value function, for example, for minus 10, return effectively 10. For 10, the absolute value should return 10. And here I'm missing an example which should be the 0, for example. So this is also a good time to ask yourself, what are the limits of my function? In which domain it's working well? In which domain I need to think the corner cases? So in addition to have the test, I'm also thinking about my code. So this is not only winning about just writing the test, but also making a support for me to think about what I'm doing. We can make some more complex tests. For example, we can create a particle, a class. So after creating it at position 0, we can try to move it and to check that it's at position 0 and move it to position 10 and check that it's at position 10 at the end. So tell me, this is a quite simple example to probably what you are writing every day, but we will come back on that later. A more complex example, now you take two particles and you want to check, so you place the two particles at a position with a certain speed. And I'm checking, for example, that they collide. If you're speaking about the CERN people, this is the kind of thing they are making, they collide particles. So I make, for example, an elastic collision here, and I'm checking that the collision has happened, and I'm checking that the particles are going back in the right way. Of course, my test will become more and more complex, like this, as long as I will progress in my software. The goal is all the time to try to keep my tests simple. If my tests are to make 500 lines of code, this is wrong. I should find a way to express my test in a simple way, so I have a simple API in my code. This is where I will say that the test is also happening something to me. It's forcing me to have a clean API. If I have a poor API, my test will become complex, and it's telling me that there is something wrong to myself. So now I have my test. If the particle test is running and failing, for example, the good point is that the test opposite to the integration test, which will probably just say my car is broken, the unit test will probably tells you if you have rightly written it with assert, that it's failing, where it's failing, so which part of the test is failing, and what are the values, the expected one, which you don't have to remind yourself because it's written, and the current value, which is obtained. The good point is that as a programmer, when you have both what is expected and what you get now, if you know well your program, you probably have some ideas on what is broken in your code, which means that from that, you can quickly debug what is happening, which is more hints than an integration test saying that car is broken. Good luck now, up to you to see what is wrong. So this is what is interesting with the unit test, is to have some reports about what is broken and not just it is broken. An example in a more realistic life, a lot of unit tests. So this is a small project I was working on in the past. To make running the unit test, it's taking 9 seconds. Okay. We'll see that I work in the company I was working on when I made this project. This is an I/O buffer, kind of, if you want to know what it is. They were developing exactly the same software, but with integration test only. Any idea on how long the integration test was taking on this project? So 9 seconds for a unit test, 2 minutes more. Higher. 10 minutes. 10 minutes higher. 40 minutes. Okay, so let's think you are coding. I'm making my functionality, launching the test, 40 minutes, 40 minutes. Broken. Oh, I need to search why it's broken. Okay, so if you have the unit test, you will have clearly a faster way to proceed in your day-to-day development, because you will have a feedback in a few seconds. So here it's a fairly simple example. So in real life, sometimes it's a bit more for unit tests, but let's say that 1-2 minutes, this is what you get most of the time with unit tests. Opposite to me, all the time I have seen some people not making unit tests, but making integration tests. The test time was 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, something like this. So this is quite often the case with integration tests. So now let's move to my own experience and feelings, because I wanted to push this to the teams. For the integration test, quite easy. You make this kind of talk, you go to the team and you say, we should make integration test, it would be better. Probably everyone will agree in principle about the idea. How to do it, start to discuss. And as I say, as I already said, most of the time it finished with a dirty bash script done by someone last night, which came to the next morning saying, I tried to make it, we can make it in production, we have the CI the shell script, which is okay. Fine. Fine, but quickly it costs a lot. During my PhD, we were working in an MPI implementation, and we were not able to make unit tests, so we made this kind of integration test that way with some shell script, which finishes with 10,000 integration tests. More problematic, it was taking a week to run on the cluster. So it was, a bit depressing. The first time we run this test suite, half of the tests were failing, so a lot of them for the same reason. So when we started to debug, it quickly go down. But let's think that in terms of mind, the team was in some troubles about that. In another project, we were in a Scrum team, also on the integration test, which the example I was saying, 40 minutes to run the test suite versus the 9 seconds with unit test. In terms of maintenance, it was costing roughly 1.5 developer per month to maintain the test suite. So one person plus one other, half of the time, full dedicated to run the test suite. And more problematic, at some point, the company decided to move the CI environment from something we had, which was Jenkins, to GitHub. Now we need to move the shell script to GitHub. How much it costs? 5 months. I'm very happy to have make integration test, where to migrate the unit test I had for the same project aside for some other reason, it was 1 week to migrate. By experimenting the new environment, etc., with the team, plus some other stuff. So in practice, it could have been faster also. So let's say that making integration tests, it's faster to develop, but over time to maintain, most of the time it's very costly. Unit tests. So now you come to the team and you say, unit tests, it will be better. People agree in principle. That's easy. But then everyone understands that it requires a lot of effort to get it in the code, mostly if the code is already existing and not done for that. Also, we understand that we are slower at start, which in our current world is hard to justify. So in practice, it is not so easy to convince the people to make unit tests. And to be honest, it's hard to do in pre-existing software. So this is something ideally you should try to do when you are starting a new one. This is a good moment to try the methodology. And the first skill on this path is when you try to put in an existing software, people will start to say, but this part of the software, this is too hard to test. So we don't test. This one or this function call too many other functions, hard to test. We don't test. This one, it's too simple, we will not test this one. Fine. This one, don't touch that code. It's very hard to make it working, so we don't want to change anything. Cannot test. Not done. So if you start to go in that path, you will probably have no unit test in your program after a month or more. So this is the common problems you encounter when you want to put unit tests in real life. So let's say that if you take the problem, the side I presented up to now, this is a bit like my teacher in my university. They told me, the turtle like the particle, the turtle make a step forward, you validate that it's at position 10. Yeah, fine. So myself, when I first wanted to make a unit test in a real program, one of my personal projects, I tried, and I was not convinced, because I say myself, yeah, okay, I understand on a simple example, but in real life, my program, this is 2000. This one was 100 or 2000 line of codes. I say myself, it's a bit more complex. Probably it's not working as well. To be honest, the first time I tried, I had the impression to lose my time. It was very hard to do. I didn't see the benefits because my program is already working. Why I should test if my program is working? And I already have my code, which is done. So I passed weeks to make only unit tests, which is painful. So electronic people succeed to make it, but in computer science, it's a bit harder for us. So as a feedback, it's like someone has told to me in the past that making a long run make me healthy. So I go to make a marathon, and I start my marathon, but this is the first time I'm making it. I don't know how to make, so I don't breathe. So of course, after probably a minute of running, I'm side the road and crying. But this is because I didn't take the right tool, at least the right method to make my project that way. I need to apply something a bit more strict. So if you want to make unit tests, there is some discipline to apply. Already there is a sentence which you need to remove from your mouth. This is a POC, a proof of concept. So I will make my test later, because later this is never in some ways. Never for some reason. First, your design will probably not permit to make a unit test. Your gearbox, if you didn't think about your gearbox to be attached to a wall and to be able to put an electric motor on it, or to have a box around it, simply, just to make a box, if it's just some gears put in the car, the gearbox will be very hard to test. So the design is important, and the unit test force you a design. If you didn't make it, then the unit test will be hard. Your program is done because your prototype is running. So now probably you will want to make some other stuff. We are like this, we want to go forward. Making 4 weeks of unit test, it's painful or more. And more problematic, your boss or commercial manager or your director or PhD director, if it's in research, will probably have sold to the client what you have done. And now it's time to make it working. In research, this is more that now you need to make the conference paper and to go to the conference, present it, and then make the next paper. So you will not do the unit test anyway, either in companies or either in research. And me, I am adding a small sentence here. If you make the unit test after, you will lose half or even more of the interest of the unit test. So this leads to a question: what is the interest of the unit test? Because up to now, I let the impression that the interest is only validating the code that it's running well, let's say. And this is commonly what we understand when we speak about that domain. For me, validating my code, this is only 20% of the interest of unit test. Unit, I'm thinking, not integration. For me, there is a lot of other benefits which comes with this methodology. As I said, it forces you to think a design. Your gearbox needs to have a box, to have everything in place. So if I'm unit testing while I'm developing my prototype, probably my prototype will be cleaner in terms of design. For example, one of the examples, unit test is very hard when you have global variables, so probably you will not use global variables, which in computer science we know is a bad pattern. It makes a specification about your functions, the internal functions of your code, a specification which is also runnable, which means that it stays up to date with your program. Because your documentation in HTML, you write it once, then 10 years later, probably it explains the program how it is 10 years before, but not the one which is today. The good point with the unit test is that you are forced to maintain them, to keep them up to date with the program. So it's kind of specification and documentation which go forward with the life of the program. Benefits. Refactoring. Go in a team meeting and say the word refactoring when there is no unit test. Probably the people will look at you with some big eyes and say, what this guy is saying, refactoring, goodbye, never refactoring. We don't touch the code, it's running well, fine, we do with what we have. If you have unit test, it opens the doors to make refactoring, because if you break something, you have something which tells you that you break something, which make you more confident that the thing is working at the end. Because otherwise, good luck, you break something, you didn't see it, or you see it 1 year later when you're in production, which is a bit painful. And probably you will not have one problem, but 2, 3, or 5 problems you didn't have seen since months. For new developers, when you have a student which arrives or a new developer arriving in your team, of course, it will progress far faster if he has a unit test which every time he breaks something is telling him that something is broken. Otherwise, he will break something and wait, I don't know, a week or a month to see that he has something broken. So remind also that the new developer, this is you in 6 months. When you came back to your code, probably all of you have already done the exercises to come back to a code you wrote, I don't know, 3 years before. It's not so easy. So think about yourself. And also the final problem disappear, because if you don't have unit tests, when you start to make a new functionality, probably it takes you, I don't know, 3 months to make it. For 3 months, you write code, you write code, you write code, you write code. And after 3 months, you can test. This is not working. Okay, and then you enter in a new funnel, which is probably 1 month or 2 months of debugging and praying that at the end you succeed. With unit tests, every time you write a function, you write a test. A function or a class, depending on the granularity you want to target. But I mean, every time you go out of your day, in the evening, you have tested what you have done, ideally. Which means that in your head, you are free. I know that what I wrote today is working. It's not saying it's true, but it's saying it's working. Already it's a good point. So then, for a few months, you see the progression, always having something working. It's totally different in the end. I mean, when you have used this way of programming, you cannot come back to the old way, or for months you are running, you don't know where, until you know if it's working or not. And a safety for the quality assurance guy. So I say quality assurance guy, all the time in a team, you have some people which are more kind to the quality of the software, or which like it a bit more than the others. It is always like this, there is at least one. I'm not lucky, most of the time this is me. So this guy most of the time came at the meeting, the quality of the software, maybe we need to clean up a bit, and the others say, no, but you see it's working fine, we don't see the problem. And then the problem is that in terms of human, you have a difficult discussion because you feel something as a person, and the other one feel another thing, which is also true because both are right. There is no metric, so both are right. No way to cut. If you have some unit tests, you start to have a board. I mean, if you have 10% of the unit tests which are broken, probably you have a problem. Okay. So it helps a bit in the discussion when you came back to the team. For example, if there is some period of rush before delivery, you will start to break some unit tests, which is fine for a certain time, but at some point you need to stop to solve the problems. If you have a metric, it's easier for the chief to accept to slow down for a moment. If you have no metric, it depends really on how the people discuss together. For me, it's also a kind of discrete teacher. When I'm making programming at the beginning, I don't know how to do. Like the people with the nuclear science, they didn't know at the beginning. So I need to learn. So either I learn by someone coming to me saying that I make wrong code, either I get a unit test which tell me day to day and hours after hours that I make some mistake. It looks like that it's a bit easier to receive some critiques from the machine than from a human. Yes, the machine, you say, okay, well, this is not running, I need to fix. The human, you say, why are you critiquing my code? I'm a great guy, I'm doing well, why are you saying that? And that's it, that's life. So in some ways, the good point with unit tests is that I quickly get some feedback to learn myself what is good and what is bad by myself in practice. So me, I used it a lot to learn what is a good design, what is a bad design, and what is the problems which are posed by my own design. But it's some constraints, of course. If we take all the possible codes you can do, You can make first version. If you go randomly to make a code, you will probably have something not working, not at all. If you take a bit more care, you are in this domain, it's doable. Probably with some chance you reach the end of the programming time, but probably by hitting a wall over the path. So in practice, normally you take more time to make design, discussion, think. And ideally, if you want something testable, you need to make things KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. If you make some complex stuff, probably you will have some troubles to make your unit tests. And the good point is that the unit test will tell you that you have made this not KISS. The good point also, if you make KISS, is that you avoid this part of the programming space. Where is my cursor here? Where you need some superhero at some point. It's always like this. When the software becomes complex, you all the time have a superhero in the team, which is able to manage this complexity and which for himself has a tendency to make increasing this complexity because it's okay for him. But for the other developers, probably not. So if you stay in the KISS space, probably it will be easier for all the developers to manage the software. A good point. So why it avoids to make some complex software? Let's take an example. The morning not KISS function. So in the morning, you want to take a coffee, you want to take out the dog, and to open the door of the garage. If you are a great programmer, normally you split all those steps in a function or a set of functions, a class, let's say, and you can unit test everything. Fine. But if you are in high performance computing or operating system programming, you like to make some tuning. We like optimizations in our domain. So in optimization, what we do, we say that while we are drinking the coffee, we can take the leash, put the leash on our back while we are drinking, also take the key and put the key in the pocket. And now we are ready when we go to take the dog out, we have everything on our side. Okay, we have made some kind of prefetching in some ways. Fine. But if in my code I didn't make a nice splitting of this, my unit test now will be very hard to write. Because now, if I need to make a unit test about the dog, I need to call the coffee function. And the unit test is telling me that I made a mistake. Good point. Okay? So if I'm making the unit test, I have some feedback to tell me that I make some mistake by splitting my code. I will see it. This is a constraint, but at some point it's a win because I can still make the call before, but I just need to have a box around those two functions to be able to call it outside and not putting it inside the first one. So this is a bit like some electronic card. If I take some electronic cards like this, which one is easier to test? Here I see some component, I can take out the component and make a unit test easily. Here I cannot judge because I'm not an electronic guy, but it will be clearly a bit harder to define what should be my unit test about this. An integration test probably easier. I took the plug outside, but to test what is inside, it will be harder. Okay, here I can take out the component and it's fine. In terms of complexity, why it's interesting to have unit tests? As I said, all the time, software it's increasing in complexity. No way to go in the other side. It's like entropy in physics. Same thing in computers. It go up without being able to go down without some efforts. The good point, if you have some unit tests, you will be able to refactor sometimes. Okay. So me in practice to fight this complexity increasing, I'm refactoring quite often. Refactoring, it's going down. So refactoring again, after it go up again, I go down again, etc. Refactoring regularly to keep my complexity low. Don't make me lying, you will not be able to get a flat complexity. This is not possible in real life. It will go up anyway. The only thing is that you can get something less steep than if you didn't do a unit test. Because if you never refactor, you will get most of the time in something which is more exponential. And if you go to the exponential, at the end, you finish with the heroes in the team, which are the only one capable of handling the project. So the way I'm working most of the time, this is refactoring, making test, refactoring, making test, making my new feature, which is nice. Huh? This is like in the highway. When people need to make some work in the highway, they prepare the terrain, they prepare the place, so they can make the work. And once the place is prepared, they make the work. Huh? Same thing in software. I prepare by making the refactoring, and when I'm ready and everything is in place, I can do my new feature. And then I loop like this on the thing. Now a small question: where is the value of your software? In the code? Or in the knowledge of the corner cases? Because if I need to make a version 2 of my software, what is the more valuable part I will call? The previous code or the knowledge I have when of all the problems I encountered by making the version 1? Probably more the corner cases. Okay, this is where is the value in practice. The knowledge you have as a developer about your software is more about the corner cases than on the code itself. Okay. The good point is that when you are making the unit test, you encode the corner cases in the unit test. So you have a place where it is written, so you can take it back when you make a version 2, make your version 2. Otherwise, your knowledge is in your head. 20 years later, probably you are still in the team, probably not, depending on your age. But in your head, the corner cases, some are still there, but some others, they're gone. Okay? So this is a way to encode the main value of what is interesting. I can give an example. My memory allocator I developed during my PhD. I took 1 year to develop the first version, learning and making my research. So not only writing the code. I translated it in C++ a bit later, which took 1 month. Getting something working at the end, making a memory allocator is not easy because when you break the memory to debug, good luck. So as soon as you have a bug, it's a problem. I made a Rust translation of this allocator in 2.5 weeks after that. Because I have the unit test. I just have to translate and to reshape a bit because I want to change my model. Run my unit test because I have the knowledge of all the problems I encountered the first time. And then getting something running. So I win a bit. This I will skip. I don't what time is it? So I will forward a bit. This I will skip. For me, it's also a small argument about ecology, about computer science, because you know that most of the time today, you finish by running, I mean, at least in research, most people are running in a calculator, not on their laptop, which means that we have a tendency to make the development on the calculator. When you make the development on the calculator, you make a run, it fails, you make again a run, it fails, you make a run, it fails. And by that time, you make some reservation on a machine, which costs a lot. Okay. If you have some unit tests, this is what I did at CERN. At CERN, I was developing for 500 servers, so a large calculator to take out the data. I will speak about it later. For myself, I was making all my development locally on my laptop with unit tests, validating everything because it takes 9 seconds on my unit, so I can run it in my laptop, no problem. When all my functions are running, my program is set up, run a bit in my laptop. Now I go to a calculator to take some resources and run. There, of course, I will have some problems. No way to say that there is no luck that it's running all the time well. But most of the problems has been removed with a lower cost in practice. So it's a kind of good point for the ecology because I see a lot of development in supercalculators. So most of the people are making this kind of pattern. I develop on the calculator and take 4 cores, 8 cores, 64 cores just for my dev to get a bug. This is quite costly in practice. Same for the CI. I say, if I have a run which takes 9 seconds, if I consider the build plus the unit test, it's a minute or 2 minutes to validate the test of the software. If I have 40 minutes now, If I take a laboratory like here, there is, I don't know, 100 people here. If 100 times 40 minutes, you quickly understand that one server will not be enough. So you will buy, I don't know, 10 servers to make your CI for all the developments. With unit test, probably one server is enough. So it's also an argument which we can have for this. Let's say for me, I see, I'm saying unit test. I'm not saying you should not do integration test. Don't misunderstand me. The cost is increasing when you are going to the end-to-end test. But what I consider most of the time is doing this. For the unit test, as it costs far less, I'm doing a lot of unit tests, some integration tests, and some very few end-to-end tests. Okay, like your car. If Renault didn't test the car on the highway, it's not because I make some unit tests that you will be happy to take the car. So, all are interesting at the end, but not at the same cost, so not at the same intensity. This I will skip. In research, because most of the time, people are saying that unit test, I mean, it's a bit the impression that unit test is done for the industry. Because in industry, we want to have something which run, which should have no bug, etc. I think that in research, it's also we need something with no bug. When the LHC is running, you don't want a bug. So it is also present here. But it's even more worse in research because you change your path all the time. You are making research, so you don't know where you are going. You have an idea, then your idea is not working as you want, or you have a new idea, so you change your path, change again. So the path you are exploring is a bit like the train circuit, and going in every direction. And every time you change your path, you need to refactor your code, ideally. Or your code becomes more complex. Either you choose. With the unit tests, you will be a bit more fluent to change your way because you can validate again your new way of thinking in a more easier way. So you can explore more with unit tests also in research. So for me, this is interesting for researchers also, and probably even more. Mocking. Up to now, I speak about a very simple example, the turtle which go forward, and what's very simple. In practice, you have more something like this. You have a code plus some complex libraries underwood called by this code. So first, for the libraries, you consider that the libraries are running. You will not unit test the libraries, it's not your goal. I mean, you are the developer of your code. So this is not your goal to validate again what is probably normally already validated in the libraries. So normally you consider that what is outside of your domain is running well. This is not always true, but this is ideally what you should consider. But even in your code, sometimes you have something like this. You have some simple function which will be easy to test to here. But probably you have a very complex object composed of, I don't know, 2,000 other objects, composed of 100 other objects, and a tree which is probably complex. So to make unit tests with that, it will be easy for the leaf part, but to make a unit test of the complex object, probably you will have to take mostly half of the car in your test, which is problematic. This is not anymore a unit test. So in practice, what you do, you cut the dependency, and you make what we call a mock object, a mocking. This is exactly what we did for the gearbox, because we didn't put a gas motor, but an electric motor in my example. We cut the car at some point and put a simpler part of the function to replace the complex part. I will skip it like this. Well, let's take this example. You have a function you want to test. So you have your test here. The function you want to test, which calls some function plus another subroutine, which is very complex. What you can do is cut the normal implementation here and make what we call a mock. And the mock, this is what in computer science is simply a function which directly returns a value. Instead of making some complex computation, the function directly returns 25. All the time 25. And this is my electric motor. It's all of the time running at the same speed, for example. And now I can cut down the dependency in my tree and simplify what I will do in the higher part of my program in the unit test. Okay. So this is an important part of the methodology because without the mocking, you think at some point you can do unit tests for the higher part of your program, which is in practice is not true. Just to show an example which is not perfect, I need to rewrite this one another way. For example, if you have a function which use a random function which is a bit complex to test in a unit test, I can make a mocking by patching the random function in Python and making it returning always 1.0, for example, so that my collision happened all the time, statistically. Okay? So this is the way I will replace the function. I will use the patch function and give directly the value which should be returned by the function, erasing the function in the program. Okay, replacing it by a simple version. Of course, you can make some more complex mock, but ideally your mock should stay simple to be able to understand your test easily. Mostly in every languages you find some unit test frameworks, either for making the unit tests themselves or for making the mocking. So I will give you the slide, so I will not take all the time here. Let's say in Python you have a default one which is PyTest now, which is the recommended one most of the time, and based on the unit test, which was the old default one in the past. In C++, I'm using Google Test all the time because I think it's one of the best one today. Catch2 is the same API mostly, and it's fine. The two others I didn't use too much. CppUnit is quite old now, so you should not use it in practice. In C, there is Criterion, which is purely C library, which is fine, but personally I don't like it a lot. So I prefer to use some C++ test directly with Google Test, calling my C function from C++. The framework is done in a better way to make this than using directly C, which has a lot of limitations. And the other languages now in Rust or Go, the languages themselves offer you a way to write unit tests. It is now common in the new languages which come. So let's take a timing example to show you that, because you understand that everything I'm saying will cost a bit to make it in place. So let's me showing that you can win a bit of time. So here I will take one of the examples where I practiced unit tests. It's on the LHCb experiment at CERN. And the goal was to implement 40 terabytes data acquisition system, 40 terabytes per second. So some data to read out at fast speed from the detector. This was 40 terabits. This was far too much to be able to read them from one server. So it was 500 servers to read everything and to send the data to 3,000 servers to compute, to treat all those data. So we had a prototype we wanted to explore on several supercomputers to test the performance. And there was an existing version which was developed without unit test before my arrival. And I rewrote a second version with unit tests because it was more efficient to make the study we wanted to do. So here I try to give some numbers. Don't take them as exact number. Like in software development, this is not the same person which has developed the software. Someone before me after this guy, so something was already existing, so it biases a bit what is given here. So let's say for the core development, here I say I'm passing from 5 months of development to 3 months. Let's say there was already a previous version, so it's probably same time in practice if I should have developed without something before. LibFabric, this is a network driver, which is one of them we wanted to test. I made the first implementation 3 months, and I made the implementation also in the new implementation 1 month, which was fairly easier because of the unit test. Instead of having to test on a cluster and debug on a cluster of 16 nodes, and when you have 16 servers and a bug, good luck to find which one is badly discussed with another one with a unit test. When it's failing, this communication which is failed, it's easier. The interesting point also is for the TCP. TCP, you see here that I passed from 5 months to 4 months. So you have the impression that I didn't win anything. The point is that the version 1 has been developed by a network expert, which was developing C and C++ since a long time, knowing the kernel stack about TCP a lot. And the version 2 has been developed by a student for who it was difficult to introduce him in many projects because he was not confident in himself. So I took him because they asked, I mean, as they know that I had a unit test, they think that it should be easier to make it entering in the project. And in 4 months, he succeeded to make the implementation and getting something running at the end. So it's not only 4 months for making something, but something running without knowledge. Where in other projects, it was very difficult to make him entering in. So you win also in the human aspect. So not only time, and also it was not an expert, and he made less time than the expert. For InfiniBand verbs, also interesting. It was done by the first version was done in a version of the software which was not previously designed for that. So he has to make a large refactoring. But making refactoring without unit tests, it takes the time it takes. So 11 months. For the student who made the implementation in the second version, it was someone coming at CERN for 1 month. So he came at CERN for 1 month while he was working on GPUs, nothing related with networks. He was able to make the implementation in 1 month. And me, I get something I was able to run on some supercomputers to make some scaling. So I was very happy. And the year after, he came back for 1 month again, this same guy, to make us a failure recovery. Meaning that when connection goes on in the 500 server, we want to reconnect and continue to run. Someone making InfiniBand with failure recovery in HPC knows that 1 month, it's fairly fast to get such a feature. So in practice, you lose a bit at the beginning, but you win in the end. Okay, and you win not a few weeks, you win months. So let's go to conclusion. I will give some rules. If I'm developing for over 2-3 weeks, I'm allowing me to make the POC approach without unit tests. But after 2 or 3 weeks, I stop myself and I unit test everything if my project go in the right direction. And then for the months which follow, the years, I'm making unit test. This is my rule. If I know from the beginning that my project should work for a long time, because it's a big project, we already think a lot before, probably making the unit test since the beginning, it's far easier. Because we will avoid the stop, which I have here, by making only unit test, and probably have to refactor some things because I cannot do my unit test. Let's say for development, if you go for a project, let's say, which belong for a year or 2 years, with unit test, you will be fairly slower for the first, between 1 and 3 months, you will be slower, to be honest. But after, you start to win. It depends a bit of the project and your knowledge about unit test also. But when you master this domain, you quickly win after that. In terms of coverage, you can count the number of lines of code you covered with your test. Getting a report like this saying this line has been tested, this line has not been tested. What is a good point to reach? 100%? I need at least to reach 100% or not? 100% is too much. In practice, it's quite impossible to reach. So let's say in Python, if you reach 90% already, this is quite very good. Okay, very, very good. In C, C++, if you reach 80%, this is again very good. Getting higher, this is very hard or probably useless. If you are starting unit test, the first time you will probably reach something like 50% or something like this. Is more what happened in real life. And when you master a bit the domain, you will go higher thanks to your experience. What is important for me is not too much the coverage, but it's to have at least 1 test per function or per class. Because if you want to extend from that, you validated the API. As I said, what is important is not to validate the code, but validate the API. So if I have 1 test per API call, I win. it's fine for me. Okay, so no way to duplicate, to have 100 tests per function. It's not interesting in my point of view. To learn in an existing software, probably you will not be able to unit test the top functions because it's not done for that. But the leaf function can be some place where you can train. When you make some work in the leaf functions, probably you can try to make some unit tests to train yourself. And next project you will do, you will be ready to make a unit test from the beginning. This I will skip. In a team, if you have a code which is not running, which is buggy every morning, you will have some discussion with your code. You speak as a person, you speak with your code, and if it's buggy all the time, your mind starts to become a bit in a strange way. If your discussion with your code is in a strange way, it propagates to the team also and to the relation between the people. So think about yourself when you are making a code in a team. Making unit tests is also a great way to improve the interaction in terms of human in the team, which is a new, another benefits you have in addition to validate what you are doing. So I will finish here. The dev coffee flow. If you have some integration tests, you develop for 5 minutes, you run your integration test for 40 minutes. You debug for 20 minutes or more. And in the meantime, you take a coffee because during the 40 minutes, either you switch to another task, which is painful, either you go to take a coffee waiting that integration is done. Next test, 40 minutes, probably another coffee. And you run that way, making coffee test, coffee test, coffee test. In real life, this is more something like this. You will code for 5 minutes, because you will not launch the test for 40 minutes every 5 minutes. This is not true. So you will code for 2 days, running the unit test, get a failure, and then making 4 days of debugging, and then coffee, the last 4 days. Okay? With unit test, this is a bit more like this. 5 minutes of coding, 10 seconds of unit tests, 10 minutes of debugging, probably, 10 seconds of test, etc. And coffee regularly when you want. Okay? So you will see that with such a development, you will be a bit more fluent. And also to discuss with the people, because when you are in a very difficult bug, because you have probably 1 or 2 bugs here and not just one, you are less kind to discuss with the other people in your team. So the human also pay a price about this. So to the conclusion, let's think about real-world engineering. So in software, we are in the virtual world, but sometimes it relates to what is happening in real life. So let's always make some kind of jump like this between the real example and what you are doing in your software. And it's not because it's virtual, it costs nothing, as I show you. And it absolutely do not cost nothing in long term, mostly, because in short term, probably it costs nothing to make an integration test with a shell script. But in long term, in the development, it's a very high cost in practice. As I said, in research, you want to explore, so it's interesting for me to use unit tests. I'm not saying it's just for the company guys. And in terms of human aspect, you also win something, which is a better, for you also, a better feeling in face to your code day to day. Think to the next guy, which is you in 6 months. And you will see that at the beginning, the unit test is not easy. It's something hard. So the first time you will do it, you will be afraid. This is, I think, for sure. But if you take time, it will become your friend. Thanks. Hmm, 10 minutes. So if you have any questions, yeah.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I have maybe a dumb idea, but is it a good way to work to write tests before writing your function? For example, if you want to do like a matrix product,
Yeah.
you know what answer you are expected, and then you write tests, and after that you write the code to verify if you succeed this test or not.
Yeah, this is what they call the TDD, test-driven development. This is the methodology coming from software engineering. So this is, for me, a bit a theoretical aspect because, I mean, you can do it for a function easily. This function, I know where it goes and I can predict the result. So I write the test before, then the function. There was some people at the past saying that you should write all the tests of your code, then coding. The virtual machine of Python has been made a bit like this, which has required a lot of works because you need to write all your tests, you make the implementation. Of course, in that path, you see that your implementation is not doable that way. Probably you missed something when you write the test, so you need to come back on the test. So, I mean, if you can pay the price, it's something interesting, but in real life, let's say it's a bit very costly approach. So myself, I prefer to do the function, the test, the function, the test. Also because making the test before is fine in Python, in Java, or this kind of stuff, where when you don't have the function, you have a nice error. The problem in C is that at least you cannot compile if the function is not there, or if you call the function and return a pointer null, it will just take fault and stop your test suite. So there are some languages which are not suited too much for this approach of making the test before. As I'm programming mostly in C++, I'm mostly doing the test, the function, then the test, and looping that way. But that's true, that's a good approach if you can do. Another question? We can ask remotely, maybe. On the remote site, some questions? Yeah, here some questions.
In C++, you have the private functions in classes. What's your approach for testing them?
Yeah, that's a great question. Should I test the private functions? So it depends a bit about the class. If the private functions are quite simple, you should say no. Otherwise, what I'm doing is I'm making this function protected. And I'm making an inheritage in Google Test. So the test inherit from the class, so it has access to the private members. The other way is to use some macros. And instead of writing public and private in a minor case, you put it in a macro. And in a macro for the unit test, you disable the privacy. So you can have access to them. That's one way. The proper way, probably.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
But if your object is complex, it's probably nice to test them. Yeah. Now, if you have too many private functions, it's probably that your design is broken also. So in theory, I mean, me in practice, I don't have too much the question. Because if I have too many private functions, I say myself that probably something should be splitted in something dedicated to make those handling, and which is called inside the other one. To use composition is probably a better way in that kind of problem. Yeah. In the back, there is a...
Yeah, thank you for the talk. In my field of work, sometimes we use large codes which are available in GitHub and make modifications to that code.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm always worried the code that already exists have some bugs.
Yeah.
How do we say, like, what do you say, like, how we go ahead, like, maybe perform some tests, some unit tests or something like that to see whether the initial code had some bugs or not?
So you mean importing the part of code in your code, or calling it as a library?
Calling it as a library and
calling it as a library. So in that case, probably if you're suspicious about the library, you can write some unit test about that library. I mean, you need probably more integration. You can write some tests which use the library, and you see that it's going in the right direction for you. Okay. For example, first day I will present you Malt. For Malt, I depend a lot on the operating system and on the way it is running. So to validate that nothing has changed about the specification I'm depending on, I have some unit tests to validate what the operating system is doing in the bottom. So in kind of way, I'm validating a bit the libraries I have bottom of me. But in that way, either or there is another case, the library has some unit tests also, possibly. If it's the case, you should run the unit tests which are in this library. But then you rely on the fact that they'll rightly make them. But if you are suspicious, add some unit tests about this in your own code. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But in that case, the good point is that you will validate only the part you are using. So normally you are using most of the time a limited set of the API of the library. So you can make the unit test and pay the price to make them. Any other questions? Who is making unit tests here in this project? I mean, or has a chance to have some? Yeah, half. Huh? So we see we are quickly in the integration test. Integration test was. Yeah, so we are more in the first approach, which is I test by hand, huh? Which is common and which is fine depending on what we are developing. Huh? To be honest, also it can be fine depending on what we are doing. Me, I was very happy during my PhD because, as I said, my work should be applied on a very large software. So when I have a bug of my code in a very big one. So if you have a bug, good luck to find if it's your problem or the problem of the code, of the application. So myself, to be able to succeed on this problem I had, the unit test was a great help because every time I had a problem, my unit test was telling me that I was wrong. So when I was running on the application, most of the time I succeeded, which means that I was able to have some real results on real life application, not just toy, which is interesting for research. No more questions? One? Yeah. Microphone.
I think kind of related to testing indirectly, but you said you had a project that you rewrote 2 times, I believe, like once to C++ and then once to Rust afterwards.
Yeah.
I was just curious, like what pushed you to make the decision to rewrite in a different language? And then when you rewrote it, how much did you have to change? And I'm specifically interested in your answer for Rust.
Yeah. So the first time I rewrote to C++, it was more for fun to study more design with object programming instead of C flat approach. So I made this after my PhD on free time, huh? So it was not for my main work. For Rust, it was more because I was questioning myself, is Rust fine for making system programming? So you know that Rust don't like void star. And in malloc, when you're implementing a memory allocator, of course, you have void star everywhere. So I was questioning myself if Rust is fine for this, and I wanted to try, okay? The good point, I mean, where I was very happy is to see that I was able to make it into 2.5 weeks. I mean, to have most of the software in place in 2.5 weeks, thanks to the unit test, huh? Because I was porting the C++ version, which was already object. I had to make some changes because in Rust, I didn't have the inheritance. So I had to shift a bit some stuff. But thanks to the unit test, I was able to quickly solve the problem I encountered by making the mistakes when I shifted down. So I would say if you want to make again a new version, this is a fairly help to have them. Otherwise, probably, I mean, to be honest, if I should have rewrote my memory allocator in C++ or Rust without the unit test, I said 1 month for C++, probably it should have been 3, if I estimate. And for Rust, the time to get something running in the end with pointers, learning the language at the same time, I mean, learning a bit, at least 1 month or 2, or even 3, like for C++. Yeah. So this is something interesting because even if I didn't use as at production the version I wrote, I can try. You know, in a team, you say, I want to try a new language just to see the feature which can arrive in the project. I made it at CERN also, the LHCb program I presented, I had 2 versions. But in practice, I made the third one in Go. Thanks to the unit test also, in Go, I succeeded to get it quickly. I see some mistake because Go don't have the same shaping of the language. I have some, mostly the channels, the other way to make multi-threading. And I see that it's a better way to make my program that approach. So I didn't keep the Go version, but I take again the Go concept about channels to put it in my C++ version, and I gain in performance and in simplicity of the code. So the good point of the unit test is that you can explore after that some part of your code on other languages, see what is good and bad. Of course, trashing the new version because you don't want to change the release you are working on mainly, but you can take back the experiment you have from that to learn something from for the old version. So to explore, I mean, you have even when you make a refactoring, I mean, when you make a refactoring, most of the time, the first time you try if it's a big refactoring, probably you will fail. You will make the refactoring, you will break half of the test. So me, I say myself, no, not the good way. I reset, I kept the version somewhere, but I reset to the main branch. And then I try to make in 2 steps. One step, some changes, another step, the other changes. Break too many tests, again, reset, 3 steps. And doing this that way, I finish by finding a way to make my path in this refactoring. Which, if I don't have the unit test, I make the changes, looks at many things are not working, like this, and I say myself, yeah, but I don't have too much ideas how I can proceed. So either I go back and I never try again, or either I keep my version without being sure that it's running again. It's a great help to have this as a rope to progress in your software. And for students, when you have a student which arrives in the software, this makes a very big difference. They quickly progress in entering in the code. For student or a new developer. Refactoring without unit test, me, I don't do. I don't know you, but people are right to make a big eye when you pronounce this word when you don't have a test. Any questions remotely? So there is a. So no questions remotely. So maybe we can stop here and take a coffee. We have passed all the unit tests, so now we can take coffee to debug.